Presidency is denying reports that it's drafting new regulations to deal with any potential state of emergency in the country. Report newspaper says the South African National Defence Force has endorsed the proposed regulations. Let's talk to the Right to Know campaign spokesperson Murray Hunter now about what's being reported. Murray, a very good morning to you and thanks for your time. Is this something we should be concerned about, seeing as these are draft regulations, nothing is cast in stone, and there are processes yet to get underway around it?
Well, I think that on one hand, what we need to remember is that the state of emergency legislation in South Africa has been in place since 1997, obviously that replacing the apartheid era provision. So what this is regulations that actually just that are required under that law. So in one sense, we've had these provisions, they're in the Constitution, there's a law. There's nothing new about the power to declare a state of emergency. I think that the real concern is that in the last year, Department of Justice has shown that it's dusting off those regulations and looking closely at them. Presumably, just doing their homework to ensure that if a state of emergency is declared, those regulations are in place and ready to go. And so I think where the concern comes is people are starting to wonder what is it that made the Department of Justice decide that now is a good time to start doing that homework? We have seen the regulations, so I'm not sure who's denying that their existence, because we know that they exist. We've looked at them, and I think that it's the content of it which really is going to start the conversation about whether or not we need to be concerned.
So would that be, well, according to some legal experts who are saying that it would be conduct that was experienced in the 1980s, it will be reminiscent of that there might be some human rights issues that might be questioned here as well, if these were to be passed as they are, according to what you've seen?
Yeah, I mean, certainly, there's no comparison between this and an apartheid era state of emergency, but whenever a state of emergency is declared, by its nature, it means suspending certain rights that are already enjoyed under the Constitution. So, for example, there are very harsh anti-protest measures in there. There are harsh measures against saying things that could be seen to be fomenting dissent or bringing criticism or hostility towards particular people. There are, so for instance, it would become a criminal offense to make what's called disruptive statements under a state of emergency in terms of these regulations. And those are the sorts of things, on one hand you can say can be expected under any state of emergency, but in the political climate of South Africa, and also remembering our history of how states of emergency were used really to abuse human rights, I think that it is important that we need to say this conversation can't be happening in back corridors. This is a conversation that should happen, including all South Africans. It should. These draft regulations should be published. They should be subject to public discussion, and also we need to know why is it that they were dusted off now.
Yeah, well, I suppose that is the question. I mean, nobody has said that the public consultation around this won't happen. I mean, it's still in a drafting phase, and in all likelihood, the public will be able to have its say. But like you say, the more worrying question is why the decision now to look at this?
Yeah, I mean, look, let's go back to that first thing, because in fact, it's not necessarily a given that these will be published for discussion. I mean, at the moment, as you said, a number of institutions have, or at least the presidency has denied that this process is unfolding at all. But the nature of these regulations are that when a state of emergency is declared, the president must issue regulations that spell out really the rules of engagement during that state of emergency, and that is what has been drafted now. So this is really a template for any potential state of emergency, so that when it's declared, there are regulations ready to go. Which means we're not really necessarily going to be given a chance to discuss these and debate these before it's published, and I think that's a real concern. The second thing is why we know that this has been worked on since 2016. So this is a process that started a year ago. There are signs that suggest that some parts of government are becoming increasingly disquieted about the levels of civil unrest, the levels of protest. For instance, they were very much shaken by the extent to which Fees Must Fall protests started to link up and connect with each other in 2016. So those sorts of thoughts have to be quite close to the front of the minds of the people who are drafting them. And, you know, we really, when we experience civil unrest, when we experience political instability, for us, this is a moment that our problems need to be resolved through maximum openness, maximum debate, maximum tolerance, and a shift towards, towards exploring other options is certainly not something we support.
Okay, well, like you say, it's not a given then, Murray, that this will be up for public discussion and public consultation. But by law, what needs to be happen? What needs to happen with something like this?
It's actually, you know, from here it's not clear. As I said, this is a template for regulations that would be passed under a state of emergency, which means that it's not an ordinary regulation, it's not an ordinary bill or anything like that. I think that irrespective of what the plan was for these regulations, the cat is out of the bag now. It's being debated, it's being discussed. We know that those regulations exist. Some people have seen sight of them. I think it is on the Department of Justice to publish them, to start a conversation, and also to include South Africans who would be affected by these regulations in that discussion. It should happen through Parliament, and it should happen as quickly as possible.
Okay, well, we'll have to wait and see what happens and cross those bridges when we get there. That's Right to Know Campaign's Murray Hunter. We're back after the break.